Some Republicans who have taken this moment where they've seen gas prices spike to criticize sort of the administration big picture, right? Canceling Keystone Pipeline, halting leases for new drilling leases on federal land, saying that sort of the administration's policies writ large have contributed to the rise in gas prices. What's your response now to that?
Look, our view is that the rise in gas prices over the long term makes an even stronger case for doubling down our investment and our focus on clean energy options.
On inflation as an action, but so far this week we haven't seen any action from the administration on gas prices. The president in Europe said, we would see action sooner rather than later on Wednesday, that it was his top priority. So is the message to Americans headed into Thanksgiving, where everybody will be driving to see their family and friends, that you think the current prices are acceptable?
We certainly don't think that. The message to Americans is that we're not just closely and directly monitoring the situation, which of course we've been doing, but we're looking at every tool in our arsenal, are engaging with countries and entities abroad like OPEC, and we're looking at a range of options we have at our disposal, but I don't have anything here to preview for you.
1 in 4 Americans, according to a new survey, have experienced some kind of loss of income as a result of higher prices. The president has expressed concern about this. I know that you are working on different fronts to address this, but I mean, how urgent is it, and how, is there any sort of specific concern that this is going to affect not just political outcomes, but just the overall economy?
Sure. Well, Andrea, first let me say that, a lot of the talk about inflation, I'm not saying from you, but in general out there, has been, it's become a political cudgel, and it shouldn't be. It's impacting, as you said, millions of Americans, no matter their political party, and that's certainly of concern to the president. I would note that everyone from the Federal Reserve to Wall Street agree with our assessment that inflation is already expected to be substantially decelerate next year. And the Build Back Better bill that we are working to move forward will not add to inflationary pressure and will ease inflationary pressure. Cost of childcare, cost of housing, cost of gas, cost of household goods. That's how people are experiencing this on a day-to-day basis, and that is, of course, of concern to the president. Our view is that the real risk here is inaction. If we don't act on Build Back Better, what we're doing is we won't be able to cut child care costs in 2020. We won't be able to make preschool free for many families starting in 2022, saving many families $8,600. We won't be able to get ahead of skyrocketing housing costs. I mean, that's a part of this bill too. Our view is this makes a strong case. This is a strong case for moving forward with this agenda, because what we're really talking about is cost to American families. This is not a bill that will add to inflationary pressure. And in fact, over the longer term, it will ease inflationary. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said about Build Back Better, I don't think that's an inflation problem. Moody's Analytics Chief Economist Mark Zandi, I don't think the Build Back Better agenda will be inflationary. Our favorite, the 17 winners of the Nobel Prize in Economics, who wrote that because this agenda invests in long-term economic capacity is because it's fully paid for. And the reason it's fully paid because we're asking corporations, the wealthiest Americans, to pay more in taxes. You don't need to be kind of a sleuth here to understand why some Republicans are speaking out against this package.
Be somewhat of an immediate action to mitigate these high gas prices, as opposed to waiting for the BIF money to be implemented to address the long-term supply chain issues, or the Build Back Better to be passed. Why has the president not yet done that? Does he plan to do that soon?
I don't have anything to preview for you. I can just reiterate what I conveyed a little bit earlier.
Tax Policy Center, that under the Build Back Better plan, most millionaires would get a tax cut, mostly because of SALT. Separately, it finds that 20 to 30% of middle-class households would pay more in taxes. How does the White House frame this reconciliation plan as a tax cut for the middle class paid for by the rich, when this analysis is showing the opposite?
It actually doesn't. Just to give a little bit more context of what the report showed, it also showed that the average family with children making $75,000 to $100,000 per year will get an income tax cut of about $2,230. It also showed the average. It showed the average taxpayer with income above $1 million per year
not take effect, that cut that you're referencing, until 2023. So I guess what I'm getting at is, next year, 2022, expectation is that middle-class families will be paying, granted, a little bit more, dealing with issues like gas prices being high. You will be done in the immediate future to address the next year.
Actually, many of them are short term. But what is true and is not often out there is that a lot of these pandemic relief programs are ending. Right? Are ending. So when people are out there, this isn't your question, but it just made me think of it. When people are out there criticizing the influx of money into the economy, that's actually misleading and inaccurate. You're talking about because of the vaccine mandate being implemented, and is it specific companies? I just haven't seen this data, so give me a little bit more information.
So there's some companies that are concerned once the vaccine mandate goes into place that they may have trouble retaining workers, especially about this.
Well, first I'll say that hasn't actually been what we've seen at the vast majority of companies who have implemented vaccine mandates. So we haven't actually seen that to date, so I don't know that we would have that to predict in the future.
Vaccine mandate, right? So
I would see if
up,
companies convey that, we can speak to that. But obviously, we're working to implement the OSHA requirements.
Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that in September alone, 4.4 million people quit their jobs after 4.3 million in August. So how are those figures accounted for when the president talks about the record 5.6 million jobs created in the...
I'm not sure what your question is, though. Are you asking how many of the new jobs created are people changing jobs, or...
You know, in 2 months alone, some 9 million people quit their jobs. And I don't know that they're all going to new jobs. So is there any concern about this trend, dubbed the Great Resignation? Is there anything you can do to reverse it?
Well, we know we've seen labor shortages in some industries. In some industries, that's because they need to have a more competitive package to offer to workers.
The president talked about how it will ease congestion at ports. But those projects are going to take time. So when do you think that funding will actually have a direct impact on the bottlenecks we're seeing now? And in the meantime, is there anything more the administration can do ahead of the holiday season?
Well, one of the steps we took, there's no question that addressing, being able to ensure that goods are moving, big objective of this infrastructure bill the president will sign on Monday.
As you said that it's a workers' market, and that some industries need to create more competitive packages, that it's a good thing people have more choices. Is that your way of saying that the White House doesn't view this as a problem at all?
I think I also said in response to Louisa's question that there are some industries where we're seeing labor shortages. Many people across the country feel this is a good time to change jobs, right? To look for a more competitive job. What I'm saying is ultimately that's a good thing.
It seems like the White House is making a lot of promises on inflation, but there are some concerns that the White House or a president doesn't have a lot of power over inflation. And even when you talk about energy prices in particular, like gasoline, you're talking about the FTC doing investigations. That's a common tactic. It usually doesn't turn up very much. Tapping the SPR, that's a short-term thing. It's not a long-term thing. So I guess my question is, for the White House, you're making these promises. How do you deliver, especially on things on like gasoline, food prices? Yes, you can deal with child care costs, but these kind of bread and butter issues, how do you actually deliver on that?
Are things like housing and childcare and healthcare.
Gasoline is a very
Correct,
big
but those are big costs on people's households, and that's why I addressed and raised those issues. I'd also note that every outside economist, a vast majority, I guess I should say, predicts that inflation will come down next year. I would note that we don't have partnership from most Republicans on that. We hear a lot of screaming about inflation. We don't hear a lot of solution agreement or willingness to participate in a solution. I noted that the way that we can and how outside economists are projecting we can address inflationary issues is by continuing to push this agenda forward, pass the agenda.
COVID-19 origins with President Xi, given he has said that China has been blocking investigators from getting access to information that's critical to that?
That is a remaining concern, and there will be a broad range of topics that will be discussed, and the president's certainly not going to hold back on areas where he has concern.